Okay, so welcome to another Brewster podcast. This is again Ted Schmidt, GM of the California Crusaders, and today I have with me Matt Rectenwald, GM of the Las Vegas Hustlers. Hi, Matt.
Hey, how are you doing?
Great, welcome, and thanks for being here. And also, I have Stephen Lane, who's the GM of the Long Beach Searchers, and thanks for joining us, Stephen.
You're welcome, Ted. Thanks for having me.
And thanks you both for showing up. And the reason I asked these two fine gentlemen here is that we will be kind of discussing milestones and kind of all-time leaderboards. If for those of you who've been around for a while, if you remember, I used to do kind of started out as weekly, and then it became monthly, and then it became not at all tracker of those things going on, the doing of which was quite boring, even though it provided some fun information, so that's why I stopped. But I figured this might give us a good way to get going, so I thought maybe we would start this, if you guys are okay, by talking about the stuff that's happened just this year, and we just had one, right? Like, William Moreland or Bunk Moreland just hit home run number 300 this sim.
He's a heck of a player. Too bad he plays for Des Moines. Haha.
Well, we've already lost one fan. Poor Ed.
Sorry, Ed.
So what do you think about, like, I mean, he's 28, right? Like, how far do you think this goes? Like, is he one of these guys that I think 500's not unreasonable to think about, but I mean, is this somebody that we're looking at for like 600 or more or anything like that?
I think it's going to go, you got to see where he's going to be at about age 33 before you can really make an educated observation on that. 600 that's rarefied air.
Right. We're going to talk maybe later about one player who's been amazing for a long time that still might not make it. So
yeah, there's only 7 players in the history of the league to hit 600. So
yeah, if you look at the Bill James favorite tool,
funny you mentioned that, Stephen. I have the same thing pulled up.
Oh yeah, I was running the numbers on some of the things we'll get to later, but I just ran it for Moreland here, and gives him a 29% chance to hit 600. And if you want to talk about 500, it's looking pretty nice for 500. It says 69%. So,
right. But Rex, you did bring up a really good point of kind of having to wait till like around age 33, because that's if they make it to 33 is pretty, without a whole lot of fall off in their skills, that's when this is kind of going to be one of the all-time players. Whereas, he's 28. He could be done next year. I mean, some of these guys, 29, 30, they're just gone amazingly.
It's true. Yeah. Fortunately for him, he plays in Des Moines and not in Long Beach. But yeah, that's a good point. You got to wait a couple of years. They get over that hump of 30 and let you know, are they going to really make that strong push or not?
Do your guys decline, or do they just have catastrophic injuries and die?
I think it's been a mixture of both, unfortunately.
Well, it's been a lot of fun.
From my perspective, it's just fall off the cliff, Mike Swanson style.
Right. Yeah. Well, and you doubled down, right? You picked up Greenwood and just crossed the fingers and hope it doesn't happen again.
Yeah, I keep doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. So we'll see how that goes.
Well, some of your results for doing the same thing over and over are pretty good. Like lots of 90 and 100 win teams. So I don't think any of us can second guess you a whole lot.
I guess, but you'd think when first Swanson, then Stoller, and now I'm going all in on Greenwood again. Yeah. Though he's not anywhere near their level of pitcher either. No. He's a completely different beast.
Yeah, and he's not a stuff guy, right? Like his skills are the kind that do tend to stick around.
Yeah. And those
he just dropped another point of stuff, didn't he?
He did. That leads me to believe that he's kind of on the cusp, which bodes well for a little bit of longevity from him.
I guess the other guy who recently had a save kind of earlier this year was Dillon Young. Got saved number 300, and I know there was some talk about whether or not that was that was one of the, is this the exciting thing this week? My answer is no, because I don't care. I guess saves are kind of, when you get to numbers that high, they're kind of a surrogate marker for he's been a good reliever for a long time. But I don't know, is 300 something you guys are tremendously excited about for saves?
Well, since 533 doesn't move the needle for Hall of Fame voters, I'm guessing that 300 is not a big deal.
Yeah, Yeah.
So is this going to be the time when I go on the soapbox and complain about stud relievers not getting any Hall of Fame love? I don't know.
I think that I obviously don't like saves, but I think I'm on Matt. I'm on your side there on the stud relievers. At least the guys that you've been putting up on the ballot lately have been on the top of my list. If not number one, then top five, because I think you're right that they deserve some more respect. The truly elite ones.
Yeah, like the observation is you're either for it or you're against it, because if you look at their array of votes that they received, particular, I'm talking about Glendon in here, lots of 1s and 2s, lots of 14s and 15s.
Yeah, and I am very schizophrenic on this. I mean, I waffle back and I just completely go one direction and the other. I'm currently in a not voting for relievers mode because my thought about it in the game, in a video game, it's a little artificial because they start out as relievers, but that's pretty rare in actual reality, right? Like most of these guys start out as starters and they become relievers because they're not effective starters or they're developed strangely. And so that's kind of my thing where it's hard for me to put one of those guys in unless they're amazing, unless it's, unless it is one of the guys who, and some of the guys on the ballot really, truly are amazing, but, and probably should get a little bit more of a look, but it's I got 500 saves. Well, I mean, you closed for, 35 years, or you closed from age 25 to age 35, and
yeah.
I don't think that you can look at saves as a measure of how good he is. I'm looking at Dillon Young's page here, and I don't even know that I would call him a great reliever.
Right, and that's what I'm.
So,
yeah.
Right, like saves, it's not the be all end all. Like, of course, I think Glendening belongs in the Hall of Fame, but I can say clearly that Justin Marco does not belong in the Hall of Fame.
Right.
They're 3-4 all time in saves.
Yeah. So, well, we're going to lose Steven before a whole heck of a lot longer, so we need to get moving through this. So that's the stuff that's happened recently. We've got a couple players that are approaching 3,000 hits, both of whom look like they're probably going to get there, but they're a little bit different, right? So you've got Juan Escobar, who is only 34 for whatever that means, but he only needs 60 to get to 3,000, which will hopefully happen this year. And then on the other hand, you've got 41-year-old Brian Clough, who I don't know why he's still as good as he is, and it's amazing and great, and he only needs 85. Which of those, if you'd asked me 5 years ago which of those guys I thought had the more amazing career, I would have said hands down Escobar, but Clough just keeps on keeping on, and it's really kind of exciting to see how long he can put this, do stuff like this.
Yeah, he's kind of a unicorn player, isn't he? Just really what I kind of look at a comp for him, and I can't really come up with a comp for him.
No, I can't either. I mean, who sticks around like this and doesn't? I don't know. He just keeps getting. He's just I don't know. He's just amazing, really. And I think
Escobar. Escobar's a slam dunk. Both these guys are going to hit the 3,000.
Yeah.
Both of them are future Hall of Famers, no doubt.
Yeah, and I don't think you could have said that about Clough 3-4 years ago, but he's gonna get it just on longevity, just being really good for a really long time, which is fine. There's multiple ways to get in the Hall of Fame. Escobar saddens me a little bit because he had a kind of a sharp decline, and now he's kind of plateaued at just kind of an above average player, which makes me a little bit sad. I wish he could have kept those peak years going, maybe 1 or 2 more years.
I mean. Sure.
Yeah,
but that's a pretty. I mean, you look at his peak was pretty peaky and pretty long at a pretty high level. So I don't know how much more peak you could ask out of Escobar. I mean, I guess you could say he kind of fell off a cliff after 30. But I mean, I can't argue with that peak.
Well, he went from like 7 wins, 6 wins, 7 wins, 8 wins, 10 wins, 6, to like the 3. It would have been nice to see maybe a 5 in there or like a 4, just a little bit more to the go.
Well, he's off to a good start this year. Going into the last sim, he's sitting at 1.1 wins already in 17 games.
Yeah, no, it's nice. And after last year, he needs a little bit of a rebound, so maybe he'll. I feel like he was the guy too that was always kind of like a good year, bad year player early in his career. His bad year was like, all-star, and then his good year was just incredible. And then he had those. Nope. I was thinking of a different guy.
Yeah, he's always been real consistent.
Yeah,
then he had that whopper 11.2 WAR from a first baseman year in 2029.
Right, which was just incredible.
From a
although, I mean,
baseman.
he got an extra game to do it in, so let's take it with a little bit of salt, right? 162 games. That's.
I think one thing that I'm seeing out of him digging into his splits just a little bit is last year he was really bad against lefties, and I saw this with my own Carlos Gonzalez. Just had a year or two ago had a terrible year against lefties, and Escobar's picking it up against lefties this year. So if that holds steady, then that makes a big difference in the year-end numbers. If you're not below average against lefties, while you continue to destroy righties, then that makes a big difference.
Yeah. Well, after that, we've got a group of like kind of 29 through 31 year olds with 29-year-old Steve Dempsey needs 133 hits to get to 2,000. Dusty Rhodes needs 48. He's 31. Gervasio Ritter needs 53. He's only 30. Gilstrom needs 151. He's 30. Those guys are all obviously going to get 2,000. The question is, do they all get 3,000? Who gets 3,000 out of that group? Is there anybody you're looking at?
I had I'd pulled out the Bill James thing the other day because I was thinking the same thing about Ritter and just how good he's been and how under the radar he's been.
Well, he's gonna show up a lot on these lists. Yeah, I was gonna ask you about that. Is he a product of your environment in Las Vegas and all those good offenses and a little bit of an offensive park, or is he just that guy that nobody pays attention to and he's just one of these greats that somehow nobody really knows about?
I think it's more of the latter. He's been overshadowed by Escobar, frankly.
Yeah.
But looking at the favorite toy on the hit question for him, they've got him projected to finish at 3,313 hits with a 79% chance to reach 3,000.
Okay, that's not too bad. That's pretty darn good. Do you know how the other guys do at all? Did you happen to check those ones out?
I ran them for the other guys. Matt, did you as well?
Okay.
So
I did not. No, that's the only one I ran.
So I ran for Dusty Rhodes. He also looks really good. It gives him 72% chance to get to 3,000. Steve Dempsey is actually the best of the group.
I'm assuming due to age, right? Like just
Yeah, because he's the youngest. But 90% for him to get to 3,000, and that I don't know if you ever want to say that somebody who's going on 30 years old and is still 1,000 hits away is 90% chance to get to 3,000. But he's got the skill set, and he's 2/3 of the way there. So
the other thing though about the Bill James tool that it doesn't know is that Dempsey's he's a speedster. So you wonder how much that's going to play into this. Like as his wheels start to go, he's down to 9 speed now, and judging from his stolen base rates, that's a change. He must have been at 10 or even higher He must have been at 10 previously. Maybe not. Maybe he could have been at a high 9. But
I think from the research, sorry, not to get into this too deep, but I think from the research we did, the steal rating is the bulk of the stealing success, at least,
well, it's the
versus
success,
the speed.
But I think the speed is what determined more how often they go.
True. If you don't mess too much with the strategy settings. Then,
right. I'm just wondering, like, is he going to be able to run off all these, I'm going to guess there's not a huge, but there's a good number of infield hits in there, and I wonder, is he going to lose that skill?
His BABIP has been holding steady. He's a 355 career, and he's actually been above. Yeah, actually, he was 371 last year.
Okay.
So he's, so far, but, that's an excellent point that if if he's relying on a lot of infield hits, then as he gets into his 30s, that's going to go down.
All right, well, let's move on and talk about home runs. It's not real exciting right now, in that the guys that are kind of near the top are old and may not get much farther. There's not like a lot of big, but the guys at the top, Antonio Sanchez, the active leader, he needs 28 for 600. I don't know that he's with you right now. I don't know, or you, Steven, right now. I don't know that he's going to get enough at bats to really get those, and he was effective last year, but you kind of wonder how much more he's got left in the tank.
Yeah, he's not off to a good start at all this season, but he is gonna take the full-time DH role for at least the next few weeks. So I'm gonna see, does he have some left in the tank, and if he can slug, around 500 like he did last year, then he'll stay in the lineup. But he's going to have to pick it up a little bit. So it's going to be up to him. He's going to get a chance to at least prove that he can make a run at 600.
You guys were both around when Frank Thomas III, when we were talking about 3,000 hits and 400 home runs for him, and that was 5 years. That was when I was doing the trackers, and I think that's what brought it up. Did either of you think he would get to 500? Because he's only 10 away.
I did. He looks like a guy who was going to, stand the test of time, and he's done so. I know there was a lot of people that were kind of on the under camp on that one, but I was not.
Okay.
Yeah, I can't honestly say that I remember exactly which camp I was in, but we're talking about one of the best hitters that the league has ever seen, so it would be really I don't think it'd be smart to doubt him.
Right, and until his decline in the last few years, he was the greatest right-handed hitter of all time. Like, it was, which is pretty amazing, and he's just stuck around so long that he's eroded his rate numbers. But the totals, he probably still is. He still might be the greatest right-handed hitter of all time.
Hold up there. I think Rafael Rodriguez would have something to say about that.
Oh, yeah. Well, this is where I don't... Okay, how about the greatest right-handed hitter in a long time? Can we go with that?
Okay. That is good. We can go with that.
This is why we have you here, because we can't do this without you. We need the perspective of us, we need you, or, I guess, Joe, now that he's back, or... Brett, or somebody that's been here forever. And Steven and I just haven't been around long enough, only, 15 right. seasons, which seems like it's been forever now.
Yeah, I gotta concur. Rafael Rodriguez, greatest right-handed hitter of all time. Sorry, okay. FT3.
Well, whatever. I like him a lot. Even though I had him for 2 months, I enjoy the guy.
I think Rodriguez was also Aaron's guy, too.
Was he really? I didn't know that. So then you've got, the other crazy thing is that he's only 385 hits from 4,000, which almost assuredly won't happen, but it could. He could play 3 years, and somehow, maybe. I don't know. I'd
bet, unfortunately, I wish I could say something different, but he's not going to get it. I don't see it.
Well, rapidly, let's do a couple things here. Let's. I'm going to skip. I made some notes that I think I'm going to skip because I want to talk about some other categories. But I do want to talk about this one. So we're going to just wrap. The next guy on the list is with an important milestone is Sunshine Rodriguez, who's 39, 14 from 500. He's not going to get that probably. But let's talk about Boogie briefly, because there's some people that don't think he's a Hall of Fame candidate. He's 19 home runs for 400. I think he's one of the 2 best third basemen of his generation. Is there an argument for him not being a Hall of Fame player?
Yeah, people are uneducated about the history of the league is the argument for him not being in the Hall of Fame.
Right.
Let's look at, here is the WAR leaders all time for third base. Okay, you have Rogelio Morales and Puckett. Okay, now Puckett's is split between several different positions. Number 3 on the list all time, Hunter Eisenhower.
Okay, so yeah, and that was always my argument, is that like that's not a common thing you find, and he was really good for a long time. and maybe this was something maybe when it was brought up 2-3 seasons ago, it didn't seem as obvious, but I thought it was obvious back then. So there you go. Everybody listen to Rect.
The other thing people forget, they think he's a bad fielding third baseman because the current memory is he's a guy who had to switch to first base,
but he wasn't.
Zone rating for his career at third base in 2,458 games, plus 134.7.
Yeah, so he was just a great player, and he's still hitting, which is okay.
Yeah, there's no argument against it. So
if you don't vote for him, we're coming after you. That's what we're saying. I'm gonna. Yeah. I sent just so you guys know what I'm talking about. I sent the other guys some notes on stuff. I think I'm gonna blast through some categories that are a little bit less exciting, just to get to some pitching stuff, because we don't want this to get too long. Runs scored, they're kind of a stat that's what do they mean, but it is interesting to note that Antonio Sanchez is only 4 from 1,500. He's another guy that I think people might scratch their head about Hall of Fame stuff. I don't know about that. I think he is definitely. Yeah, he's a DH, but man, has he been a good hitter. Gervasio Ritter, there's that name again. He's 30 years old and he's almost got 1,000. He's only 32 from 1,000. Our active RBI leader, is he the active leader? I didn't make the notes correctly, but Sunshine Rodriguez he's not the active leader. He's only 41 RBIs from 1,500. That one happened. Valerie Karlamov could get to 1,000 though. That's interesting. Antonio Sanchez showing up again on the walk leaderboard. Stolen bases we'll get back to. But moving on to pitching stuff. Let's talk about briefly discussing pitcher wins as a stat, because I think they're one of those things that's so polarizing that it's like, probably most people know me as a sabermetric guy and think that I hate pitching wins. I like pitching wins as a career number. I think on a year-to-year basis they're stupid, but for look at how good people are. But as a career number, I think they tell you quite a bit. I don't know if you guys have any other thoughts about that.
Yeah, I mean it's over the period of time, you can accrue a lot of wins. It shows that you're putting in a lot of quality starts.
So I think there are, just due to the nature of our league, where players don't move around as much and they tend to have maybe a little bit longer careers. That there are some guys who manage to get big pitching win totals that maybe aren't quite as good as what you would think based upon like MLB stuff. That's my general impression, but I think that's by far the exception, not the rule. So what do we think about 200? Like, in the old days it was always 300, but there aren't enough starts anymore. Do we think 200 is a Hall of Fame mark or not?
Well, there are currently 14 retired players with more than 200 wins not in the Hall of Fame.
So I guess the answer is no, right? Which I think is okay, because I don't think Atsumori is a Hall of Famer, and he's a 36-year-old. He only needs 4 more wins to get to 100, and I think he's a great pitcher and has been for a long time, but I don't know that I would call him a Hall of Famer. I don't know how you guys feel about that.
Right. He's not. I mean, here's where wins are kind of like, okay, wins are great, and they tell a story over time, but that cannot be the determining factor. Like, Ramon Ayala has 234 career wins, his 13th all time. Not a Hall of Famer. He gave up a whole lot of home runs, though.
Yeah, and that's why I'm if you want to look at wins, that's fine, whatever. But it's not something that would ever come into my analysis of someone being a Hall of Famer or not. I think, I don't know who mentioned it, but we do have a lot of guys who stick with 1 or 2 teams for their whole career, and if they just happen to be with a team that didn't win a lot or that did win a lot, then the number could be skewed either way.
That's kind of what I think too.
So
John Chandler might be, though, a little bit more interesting Hall of Fame case, because he was a really dominant pitcher for a few years, and he only needs 5. I think Enrique Gomez is a lock already for the Hall of Fame, and he only needs 8. And then poor Eduardo Lopez is done, but he's only 6 away from 200. Feel like I'm rushing you guys through this, but I'm going to keep plowing through. It's time for you guys to talk about my boy, Ricardo Diaz, who only needs 158 strikeouts for 4,000. Is that going to happen? You can say no, because I'm not feeling real optimistic at the moment.
Well, what are you going to do to your park next year, Ted?
Well, that's not going to affect his strikeout rates, right?
Well,
It'll affect how long he's in the game.
Yeah.
You're gonna keep starting him until he just dies completely?
I don't know. That was my plan, but he's been he's lumping in weird ways, so he's losing pitch. He's losing stuff without losing velocity, which is really annoying, and I don't know why he's doing it, but
That means his pitches are going down.
right, yeah, but I don't know why they're going down. Like usually they sap from I don't know, but he's his last he has had 4 starts this year, and his totals are 4, 6, 2, and 1 for strikeouts, and he hasn't gone fewer than 6 innings. So, that's good.
Yeah, I don't see it happening, bud. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. Do you think he gets to second all time? I think he's only maybe 100 or so from that. Maybe. I wanted him to be first. So if he makes second all time, he's first non-Steve Nebraska division, which I think is a legitimate thing.
And there's the guy who currently holds that title is a guy who probably 95% of the league doesn't even know who he is.
Right. And that's
that guy was awesome.
I already forgot his name because I don't know who he is.
Fernando Fortes.
Yeah.
But I am rooting for Diaz to at least pass Bodine, which he will.
Yeah.
I'll give him a 50-50 shot of passing Huertas.
He needs to have a good BABIP year. Like, he needs to just get lucky this year. And his injury last year was so terrible because he was going to blow right by it last year. Like, when he got injured last year, he was 9.78. And he came back 9.56. Like, he would have, and he was pitching fine before he got hurt. So, oh well,
Yeah, I think I'll disagree with Matt. I think I'll say he'll make it because I think that Ted is going to give him all the opportunity in the world.
I don't know if he's horrible. I don't know if I'll do it. I don't know. Maybe. Okay.
Somebody will do it.
Probably. Okay. Let's move on to some all-time ranking stuff.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, because the other guys that are Gary Estes is not retired, which is crazy to me. And Nelson Ramirez, I never would have thought he wouldn't get to 3,000 strikeouts. But he got just crushed by injuries, and poor Calvaruso. Oh, God. Like, just the last few years of the run with those guys was just ugly. But let's move on to all-time rankings. So, there's kind of a theme to this, but we have 4 guys in the top 10 all-time for average right now. Which I realize, like, guys in their primes are going to be higher on the list, or they're going to fade off, but I mean, that's a pretty good group of, like, Gilstrom, Escobar, Ritter, and Jenkins, all, between 4th and 10th all time with batting averages over 330. Who out of those guys stays up in the top 10, or do you think they all fall out eventually? Or let's say stays in the top 20.
Stays in the top 20?
Yeah. Because
all of them.
All of them? You think they're all that good?
Yep.
You think any of those guys have a chance to stay in the top 10, or being in the low 330s, they're going to drop out as they get old?
Say Escobar is going to stay in the top 10, and that's the only one that I would be confident in saying so right now.
Because he's already kind of had his decline phase. Like, if he plays to 40, we're in trouble, but let's say he's effective for 2 more years at this rate, and then kind of gets limited playing time.
Exactly where I'm thinking, yep.
Yeah. I think Gilstrom has a chance, being a switch hitter, and...
Yeah, he's 30. Ritter could, too. Depending on whether or not there's going to come a time when I decide I got to sit him against lefties. That time hasn't come yet.
Well, and when you do, that'll make a big difference, because we were talking about with Escobar earlier, those down lefty against lefty years for some of these guys just kill their numbers. And then moving on, talking about more offensive stuff, the number 1 and number 3 all time in slugging are active players. It was before the last sim, it was 1 and 2 with Winson and Martinez. And again, you're in a league with him, so you're probably more constantly aware of Winson than I am. But man, is that guy good right now?
Okay, I'll give you guys some inside scoop here. I was pretty close to acquiring him in the offseason.
The rich getting richer over and over again.
We just couldn't quite get there.
Oh.
And then he told me what his extension demands were, and I kind of looked at my FUBAR finances, I'm like, yeah, I'm just going to tap out. And then he signed him, so.
So, and going in OPS, like, Winston's 1, Martinez is 3, Gilstrom 4, Gilstrom and Ritter are tied at 4. Rutledge is, or maybe Ritter's 5 now, Rutledge is at 11. Like, this is a good offensive era, and I came in during a pitching era, so we're seeing some incredible bats right now.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the statement I have. I don't know if anybody else has any other thoughts about that.
I mean, agreed. And that's, I'll go back to the Hall of Fame voting again real quick. These are things that people got to take into consideration when they're looking at numbers of some of the veterans I put up. And they're like, well, that doesn't look real impressive. Like Mene Jr., who was just on the ballot, should have been a slam dunk.
Yeah.
Wasn't.
I think I put him third.
We're kind of comparing his numbers to like guys like Winston and Martinez, and like that was a different time. Look at some of the pitching performances from back then compared to now. Totally different league, totally different eras.
Yeah, that's why you got to go in and you got to look at a stat like the OPS plus, where it's not just the traditional triple slash, but it
gives you some like context
to compared to to the league average.
Let's we're gonna change tack here a little bit. We talked about Frank Thomas III getting to 4,000 hits earlier and thinking it was really unlikely. What about getting 278 hits or 281? Because there's Puckett and Kangos. Can you do that? I mean, 2 more years, right? Like 150 hits for 2 years. Is that possible?
That's possible. That would be something,
right? For one past one of those guys, like that's.
Wow.
You think it'll happen?
I do not.
Steven, you got a prediction?
I think that we're really kind of running into the point of, besides his declining skills, is he just gonna, when does he just decide that he's gonna retire?
Yeah. And he's hit some major skill decline the last 2 years. I think the only thing that gives him a chance. Well, the other problem is him being a DH. Someone's got to decide to play him every day. He does have an option for next year, and he is with Jacksonville, so that's in his favor because Tyler loves his old guys. But I think that's about his only chance. He's second all time in doubles. He won't get there. I've got some notes about triples, but let's skip those. They're weird and strange, idiosyncratic things anyway. Let's talk about. There's not a whole lot in the home runs stuff. Antonio Sanchez is 9th all time. We're not where we were with like a little bit ago with Cano and Jackson and Bo Jackson, where you thought they could really move up. There's nobody that looks right now that impressive in terms where they're close and you can predict them. But Sanchez is 9th all time. He probably will end up there. Is he a Hall of Famer to you guys?
That's a tough one. Well, you look at here. For me, I think of Sanchez. I think of Beto. And I think we're kind of getting a preview of how Sanchez is going to fare on the ballot by kind of seeing how Beto's fared so far.
Yeah, and that's not very good, right?
Well, it's not horrible. He kind of seems like the type of guy on that ballot that might get in like towards the end of his candidacy, but it's going to take a push somewhere.
Right. And you were talking about the eras. A lot of the guys that are around now, they're in the offensive boom years of the 30s. The 20s were not. And I hope that Sanchez doesn't. I think he is a Hall of Famer, and I hope that he doesn't get a lack of respect from the fact that people don't realize that his numbers in the 20s were incredible. I don't care if you want to look at, his WAR being a DH just doesn't do him justice. He was one hell of a hitter. Like just top 2 or 3 bats, and I think in the entire league for a number of years. He just, with the numbers we're seeing guys put up now, it just kind of loses some perspective or context.
It's going to be hard to ignore that 572 number
Yeah,
for homers.
right. Maybe that just makes him a shoe-in. You just look at that and people just go, oh, yeah. But, I mean, who was it? It was Jim Wilson, had like 510, and it took him forever to get in.
Yeah, 535. I think it took him 8 years to get in.
Right. So, and it was War that did it to him, right? Like, so.
Yeah, he was just a terrible outfielder for one. Didn't really hit for that much average either. But everybody who has 500 or more home runs is in the Hall of Fame. So I think you were talking about a magic number before, that 500 number, and Beto missed it by 7.
Right. And it makes
Cochran missed it by 9, and those guys aren't making it in. So.
And the only other guy we have over 500 right now is Jorge Rodriguez, who is, for some reason, in rookie ball. It's a pet peeve of mine that we do not police who's in our minor league systems better, but that's just another guy with a great career. I think he's the guy I'll always think of when I think of Escobar. And then Frank Thomas is now 21st all time with 490. Runs batted in are another number that have lost. There's something that have lost a little bit of luster, but again, Frank Thomas's 1,842 RBIs is one hell of a total. And I think, I made a note about will he get to 2,000. I think that's kind of the same as his chances of getting more hits or getting anything else is just will he play and can he avoid any more decline for maybe another season.
Right.
Yeah, I think he looks like a lock to take the 5th spot all time, and that's a pretty great accomplishment. I don't know that he'll get 2,000, but just to get into that top 5 is amazing.
Yeah, I agree. I don't. This is a part of the leaderboard that's just littered with names I don't know. I mean, I know the names, but I don't know the players. I just wasn't there. So.
Well, yeah. Here again, anybody over 1,600 seems like an automatic Hall of Fame bid.
Which is pretty. It probably should be a little lower than that even. But
And there's Antonio Sanchez at 1,737.
Yep. And there's Juan Escobar and 1669, and Jorge Rodriguez right behind him at 1651, and I think we both agree those guys will be in.
Yep, for sure.
Sorry, Elaine, I think you were saying something.
No, I was just going to say you can drop that number to 1,500 because there's about only a half a dozen in the top 29, which is the over 1,500 club that aren't in the Hall of Fame. So that seems to be kind of a magic number unto itself.
Yep. And there's a couple guys in there who really probably should be in the Hall of Fame. Medrick Wood, Kevin Halbert, and then you got Brock Lee, who one of Joe's favorite guys of all time, and the controversial Cochran, and that's the club.
Yeah, and Cochran, I just don't. I don't know what to do with him. Like, I just don't know what to do with him. Like, he's so close for me. Like, he is the line between being in the Hall of Fame and not being in the Hall of Fame for me, and I don't.
He is the Hall of Very Great.
Yeah. We were moving on a little bit to stolen bases, which I skipped earlier, because there's something with the tracker in the game, like it doesn't keep track of anything after, like, either like you have to be within X number of stolen bases for it to show up is goofy, or it doesn't keep track of stuff after like 300-400, because it's modern baseball, I guess, and they don't have stolen bases in the game anymore. But our active leader is Mario Soriano with 772, which is 12th all time. He's 34. He's slowing down and not getting as many, but he did the majority of that in the pre-stolen base boom era. Like, and I almost kind of wonder what he would be at if he had been playing, in the same days as the guys putting up ridiculous numbers now.
It's wild because, outside of Nebraska's records, I always said that Yahoo Williams' record of 1185 steals would never be broken.
Right. Because
that was previous stolen base boom era. Now, I know what you're going to talk about next.
Yeah, his Mons says, how many stolen bases is 24-year-old Mons Raider going to end up with? Because he almost has 600, and he's 23rd all time.
Steven, did you bust out the favorite toy on this one?
No, but if you guys can just stall for about 45 seconds, I will.
Yeah, well,
because I mean, good grief! Look at, Yahoo Williams was just a crazy player. He stole 100 or more, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times in his career. 1,185 steals, unbelievable, and that was in primarily the 80s and early 90s. So we're going back 50 years,
right? And and I mean he was just a machine. I mean he never, when he was 36 years old, he stole 86 bases, and his conversion rate. I'm looking for strikeouts. He stole 32, so he did slow down. But his his stolen base conversion, it's impressive. He wasn't a guy that was just doing it in volume. He was efficient, and
right. And not the greatest all-time offensive player. Didn't have a lot of pop. Played awesome defense. Not in the Hall of Fame. Right behind him, another guy just like that.
Wait a minute, he's not in the Hall of Fame?
Not in the Hall of Fame.
Can we put him back on the ballot? I mean, the dude's even if you're a WAR person, he's almost 70. He's a 70 WAR shortstop. The 350 on base percentage. Was he any good? Was he any kind of a fielder at all?
He was an outstanding fielder. And then right behind him, same kind of guy, also not in the Hall of Fame, Dash Kelly.
Who used to vote for your Hall of Fame?
What's that? They were tough.
Was it the Brett Schrader Hall of Fame? 5 people?
Exactly. The whole. I had read an article the other day with somebody who was trying to break down the Hall of Fame into as small as they could, and it ended up being only Willie Mays is in the Hall of Fame.
Right. Before we get too far, I don't want to get total Hall of Fame discussion. We can go forever.
Bill James tops out at 97% chance to reach a milestone. So I put in the 1185, and he says 97% chance. Do you guys want to take a guess on what the estimated career total will be?
I'll say 1565.
I was going to go somewhere in the 13 to 1400 range, so I'll go 1380 because I don't know, maybe it's smart enough to know the guys lose speed.
You guys you're probably correct, but what the Bill James tool, it says an obscene 1,920.
Good Lord!
Oh, that's awesome.
Which, if it was even anywhere close to that, it would be the most unbreakable record
ever.
But yeah, I think there's no doubt he's gonna top 1,200, and we'll probably just be the all-time record holder for as long as the league exists.
Well, in the next topic, something we don't get excited about, and I don't know why we do, because we've definitely moved towards an understanding of baseball where on-base percentage is king. Yet nobody cares about walk leaderboards. Nobody's like, that was that guy's 800th walk. Nobody gives 2 poops about it. I don't know why I said poops. Shit, craps. It's like this is a kid's show. There's Frank Thomas III again, who will be at the top of most of these things until he retires with, 1,500, 9th all time. And then there's Sanchez again with almost 1,500, 11th all time. And Leon Sandcastle, who showed up in the triples area, and somehow, maybe that's a thing we skipped briefly, somehow Sandcastle doesn't have 3,000 hits, which just seems incredible, but he's been platooned a little bit and hurt a little bit, so that's the reason for that.
Yeah.
But, I don't know, I think we probably should be getting a little more excited about guys getting ridiculously insane walk totals. And I wonder if we're going to see a bunch of those. It seems like we've moved towards an era of a lot higher I ratings than we used to have. So, 5-10 years, we could be seeing some crazy numbers in this group.
Definitely. All-time single-season walk leaderboard, Wareham has the all-time record set last year with 162. Fredo Martinez, 149 in 2028. And then going back a long ways, Douglas Newhouse with 147. So we're seeing a lot more walks now. People popping up on these leaderboards.
Right. And yeah, that's the thing. When I was putting together my notes for this, if you guys have any things on like recent trends or recently broken single season records, I always forget to look at those. Which seems crazy, right? Like that's the thing in real baseball. Everybody would be going nuts over like somebody breaking a single season record, and we just don't really notice. It's just
as far as those go, Wareham last year, Raider the year before for steals, and then we got to go all the way back to. Ricardo Diaz set the all-time opponent's OPS in a single season in 2023.
Are those real? I've been actually wondering about those because, like, the leaderboards, they don't seem to include the pre, I don't know, well, no, they do.
Yeah.
They do now. Is that a fix? Because, like, when you looked at, like, for a long time, he was the career opponent's, Diaz was the career opponent's OPS holder, and that didn't seem right. I figured, like, because I'm looking at, like, career opponent's OPS, and I don't see Steve Nebraska, and that doesn't seem...
Yeah, there's no Nebraska, so I think some of those that they added on later don't have the older guys, but...
It's still pretty good. So it's been long enough now that...
Yeah, and then we had Holden Blackwell set a couple of records in 2029.
Hits and singles.
Most hits in the season, 256, and most singles, 209.
Yeah, and that's kind of crazy because we're not in a huge contact era. So, like, that's, I don't know. The offense is just good these days. Speaking of Diaz, we're getting to the pitcher's leaderboard. He is the active leader in ERA, and I almost want to shut him down. Just so he stays. Like, he's 25th all time at 3.02, and Gomez is at 3.05, and those were the big... I mean, those guys dueled each other. They won the Nebraska every year for 8 years, with one Jesus Tanch. Or maybe it's not 8, but it's something like that. And, you know, Diaz has all of Gomez's Nebraskas, or Gomez has all of Diaz's. This is the reason Diaz doesn't have 7 Nebraskas. Like, they're those, you know, it was just a huge fight between the two of them, and I just don't want to see Gomez pass him on career ERA. So I'm hoping that Gomez just plays forever. That's so that he also gets some decline. He started to slide a little bit, but again, in the wins, the active leader for win columns, we have Gary Estes and Mingo Boom, who are both at 240 and 239, are somehow not retired, which also seems absurd. But then it's my guy again at 226. How many, 18th? I am probably just going to pitch Diaz until he is so atrocious. Like, if he consistently puts up a 5.5 ERA, I'll stop. I think that's about where my number is. If he can stay under, even like 5.02, I might keep doing it. But at 226, do you think he can get much higher? Do you think he's kind of...
So he needs, 17 wins to get into the top 10.
Yeah, I don't know if that can happen.
He could probably get up to 15 or so.
Yeah, like he's on pace for 14 this year, but that's not going to happen. That's just he had a couple lucky starts.
I think as long as California stays good and you keep running him out there, I think he'll get there.
Okay. Well, I'd like to see 250, but I don't see it happening. And then we're back to the category, another category we started on this. I do start to care here. Bob Sanderson's our all-time saves leader. He has 458. And that I do care about because Bob Sanderson is, in fact, a really good reliever. And he is only 150 from being the second to 600. And he's 32. So, yes? No? Maybe? Any ideas?
No, well, he can get to 600. He's not going to beat out Egan.
No. Does anyone?
That seems like another unbreakable record.
Right. Skip had a chance. Like, if Skip's arm hadn't fallen off, like, just amazingly fast. Like, I think he was like 30 or 31, and his arm just completely fell off. But he was on track. He would have had to keep his ratings until 35, but...
You got to be on a good team the whole time, too. That's the thing.
Well, and Sanderson's with Montreal this year, but I think then he's a free agent. And that should get your hopes up a little bit for him being on a good team, because he'll demand $8 or $9 million in free agency, and generally garbage teams don't, shell out that kind of money for a closer.
Well, I bet you Kyle will.
Yeah, but I mean, Huntsville, you think he'll pay $8 million to get Sanderson back? I don't know.
I don't know, probably not. He doesn't strike me as a sentimental kind of guy.
Yeah.
But if you could get him on the cheap, that would be a good fit because they're going to be a force to be reckoned with for a while here.
Right, and you don't have to be you just have to be on a non-bad team, right? Like, if you're a 500 team, you can still rack up a good number of saves. You're not going to hit the 50s or so unless you're on a really good team, but I don't know. He's a guy that, sub-3 ERA for his career, more wins than losses as a reliever. I'm excited about his prospect of getting to 600. I think he's got a legitimate shot.
Yeah, I think you're right. So yeah, he'd be second all time and probably won't get into the Hall of Fame.
Yep, that probably will happen. Let's there's not a whole lot left here. There's some pitching marks. Mingo Boone's the active leader, whatever that means, in innings pitched, and Diaz is the real active leader at 20th place. 100 innings behind him at 35-37. We talked about Diaz and strikeouts again. The exciting thing is walks, and not where Jose Cavazos is 10th all time, but where Juan Jose Elizondo is 83rd all time in walks allowed by a pitcher with 856. And I just hope that someone keeps starting him forever, because it could get great. Like, it could be really exciting. But
it could get great.
It's almost kind of amazing to me that he's only 83rd all time. Is it just, you think it's you know what it is? He probably just didn't get enough starts, right? Is that what's going on there?
Yeah, he didn't debut until 23. He was a full-time starter in his second year, but then wasn't a full-time starter again until 2032 at age 28. So
he's only been a full-time starter 2 seasons. This is the 3rd time he has been. So think of it this way: he only has 112 career starts, but he's 83rd on this list.
So wow. This is again one of our, we've already told everybody to vote for Boogie. Now what I'm going to tell everybody is, somebody, whenever this man is a free agent, sign him. If you're bad and you don't care, sign him, and if nobody else wants to try him, just somebody sign him and start him, so we can see where this ends up. Because it could be tremendous. It really could just be lots of fun to watch. Like, one of the things I enjoyed the most back when I was doing this all the time was watching. And now I've forgotten his name. The second baseman. He was in Yellow Springs for a while, ended his career in Calgary, had MS.
Oh, yeah. Brian Vogel.
Yeah, watching him climb the strikeout leaderboard was so much fun. Like, just how,
he had MS. I love that you remember that.
Yeah, that was the best. I mean, those are the kind of things that make this really interesting. So we've raced through all of this in a reasonable amount of time. Do you guys have any other thoughts about kind of this stuff and what's going on?
Let's talk on the subject of pitcher walks. Let's talk about the good side of pitcher walks. We've actually got a couple of active guys right up there in the top 3.
Jimmy Greenwood.
Yeah, my boy, now Matt's boy, Jimmy Greenwood, is tied for first place. Walks per 9 career.
Yeah, I forgot to look at that. I always get the rate ones I always forget to look at the rate ones because they don't include the really old players. Or wait, maybe they do now.
Yep.
Yeah, they do.
Henry Mitcher, he pitched for me in the 70s. He's been on top of this career board for forever. Kind of amazing to see Jimmy and Nelson Ramirez up there.
Nelson Ramirez, that's just one of those. His career could have been so much more than it was. Like, I mean, he had a great career, but like the injuries, especially late in his career, just derailed what could have been one of those all-time great, amazing careers. And he was, at 30, he was at 30 he was on pace to be one of the best. He had problems with giving up home runs, but outside of that, he never walked anyone. He struck out tons of guys. And then he just got hurt and was never the same. But I mean, back in 2024, he walked 7 guys and struck out 236. 7 for the whole season. Like, those guys took home like medals or ribbons. Like, they've got like they're part of a little club they call each other because they took a walk off of Nelson Ramirez in 2024.
That's amazing. I thought Greenwood was doing great with with a dozen walks a year, but 7, right. Oh man.
Right. Well, but if you're talking about eras and when guys played, if you put Greenwood back in the 20s, he might have done something. It's possible he would have done something similar. We just got so many more guys that are patient now that you see lots of 9s and 10 I ratings that you didn't used to see. And then Greenwood's no slouch. I mean, 2033, 10, 2032, 12. 2020.
You've got 5 already this year.
Oh.
Yeah, what are you doing to him there in Vegas, Matt? He's fallen off a cliff. His walks per 9.
Yeah, and he's rocking a 6.52 FIP right now.
Oh, geez,
it's going well.
I don't want to see him go bad.
But he's 4-1 and has a 1.19 WHIP. So I don't know what the deal is here.
He knows how to win. He just knows how to win.
He's
small sample size.
Crafty veteran now.
He's a crafty veteran righty now.
Yep.
At the ripe old age of 29.
He's like, yep, I got Bardol, Vagisil, sometimes or rub a little jalapeno in my nose.
Oh, who else do we have? Because I didn't look at like the hits per 9. Is anybody in there? It would have been Diaz forever, but he's kind of just not been the same. He's 17th now.
Number 9 all time.
Are you kidding me?
6.9.
Wow.
There he is, tied with Bob Sanderson. Of course, I'm talking pre this season, which I'm looking at right now. But
this season he's moved down to 10th at 7.0.
There he is.
That's
I'm
incredible.
going to say that Sanderson is going to be worthy of the spot in the Hall of Fame. I'm just going to say that right now.
I think
he already is. I think if he stops now, he is. Although, on the other hand, I mean, I have never voted for Lionel Sanguinaccio for the Hall of Fame, high on my list, and maybe I should be with his. Yeah, with his. I mean, he's really, looking at stuff this way, he's really unhittable. Both of those
relievers on the last ballot should have been slam dunk inductees.
He absolutely. Yeah.
Well, that's almost the problem with relievers on Hall of Fame ballots is they just hang around forever because you guys mentioned the dichotomy of half the league cares and half the league doesn't, and they just chew up ballot space forever.
Right. And then there's those, I think that there's a few voters that really feel strongly one way and will deliberately place them all the way on the back end of the ballot just because they can.
Go ahead and look at career strikeouts per 9 and see who's tied for first all time with Steve Nebraska.
Really?
Lionel Sanguinaccio.
Yeah. Wow. Why? You know what? And I used to vote for Carlos Altonista every year.
That's screwed.
But I used to actually vote for him, but I think the last couple of years I took him off my ballot because I stopped caring about relievers so much, and because he was on back when we were using the other method, just the percentage method, and. I don't know, man, but it's just so hard for me. Like, relievers, I feel like unless you were in the league, they're the hardest person to look at their numbers retrospectively. Unless you were there, part of the reason I'm so high on Sanderson is I've watched his whole career. I've seen him matter for team after team after team, and for whatever reason, it just, they lose that, you lose the perspective on them when they didn't, I don't know. Maybe.
All right, career whip. I'm just going to list off the top 10. Nebraska, Heath Rockefeller, Schmatzhagen, Mark Bobovnik, Slider Ramirez, Mike Swanson, Hayden Finch, Ricardo Diaz, Skip Glendening, John Ross Riles Jr., Roy Hobbs Jr., Lionel Sanguinaccio, Bob Sanderson.
Yeah.
There they are.
Well, maybe we're making a bit of a... Maybe we're either making people angry or making a case. I don't know which one it is.
Well, if it's Brett, we're probably making him angry.
Yeah, Brett was who Brett reminds me of with the Hall of Fame voting is Charles D'Onofrio from the GBC. He and I used to get into it every year about the Hall of Fame because I was doing the tallying for the Deuce for a while. So I would my ballot would have we had like a 25-man ballot, and my ballot would have 12 people voted for, because it got ridiculous. It got so exclusive that it was just there was guys on it that shouldn't be, and he would send back ballots with one mark. I just wanted to punch him, and at the point where I actually started Googling his name on the internet to see if I could find an address to send an email to. That was so bad, and that was back when you could do that. I actually just as a fun exercise tracked down a couple people just to mess with their heads a little bit, and then found out that Warren Steves like punk rock as much as I do. He's in some clubs.
Old school. This is brought to you by the Global Baseball Consortium.
Right. Steven's just sitting over there going, "Oh, these old jerks talking about stuff." I guess while we're talking Hall of Fame, every time someone says first ballot Hall of Famer, I just want to. It fills me with rage. It doesn't
it's Hall
matter.
of Famer or not Hall of Famer. Come on.
Right, and the whole I'm not voting for him. I don't think we do it as much as the old timey baseball writers, but I'll vote for him, but not on the first ballot. Shut up. Just shut up. Babe Ruth didn't get 100% because people are jerks. Just stop doing it.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Oh, it's a yes or no. No, I'm not saying everyone should get in on their first time, because you do, especially with us, when we put them on the ballot right after they retire, having some time to consider, that's reasonable. It's okay. Or realizing that you didn't vote for a guy and he got 60. We don't have percentages anymore, but say you didn't vote for a guy and he finished fourth, or finished at 62%, it might make you look at him again the next year, which is reasonable. In actual baseball, when guys have to be off the ballot or retired forever, the whole perspective and needing more time to get them in thing is just a joke. If you didn't, So
who? We got a couple minutes here. There's a position that really gets underappreciated in Hall of Fame voting, and that's catcher.
Yep, because they don't hit. None of them hit.
They don't last.
The same rates.
Either.
Maybe
So
that's
they don't have the counting numbers for people to say, "Oh yeah, they were good." I'm going to throw it out there. Elroy Hinson is third all-time among catchers in WAR. Is he a Hall of Famer?
Probably not, I'm guessing.
You tell me.
Your tone?
He had a peak from age.
Absolutely, he is.
He should be, right?
He is. There's no doubt.
But how long is it going to take him in?
Yeah, he should be. He absolutely should be.
These are the things that just confound me. Cisco Areola gets all this fame and glory, but he's exactly 20 points of WAR behind Hinson.
Right. Well,
he's got 5 less years active, to be fair, but 20 points of WAR behind him.
Yeah, but that's 4 or 5 win
seasons, which he'll probably be about the same.
Yeah.
Are there really only 9 catchers in the Hall of Fame?
You are correct, sir, and one of them is highly controversial. You won't even see him on a leaderboard. Dickie Brinkman.
So I have not been voting for Max Weiss Jr. In your opinion, should I be?
I think we should have been voting for Rafael Avila before he fell off.
I think I was voting for Avila. Because there were 3 or 4 catchers on that list, and I think I voted for 3 or 4, all of them or 3 of them every year.
Probably should have given consideration to Lewis Stevens. I really think Brewington should have made it.
I think I voted for Brewington and Avila.
Should you be voting for Max Weiss Jr.?
I haven't been, because for me he's not even quite Cochran-esque, but he also looks like a Hall of very, very good.
But let's look at that.
No, I think as a catcher, Weiss is a Hall of Famer. I think this is something I think that when you're talking about the Hall of Fame and when you're talking about who deserves to be in and who doesn't, you really have to consider what position they played. And when you're talking about a catcher who lasted as long as he did, 17 years, and okay, OPS plus for the career 113, career OPS 791. It doesn't pop out, but you're looking at a guy that just, he was so consistent, and he had a run in his mid-30s that was just amazing, and you can't compare him to someone like Frank Thomas, but you compare him to the other catchers in the league are doing.
Well, that's where we kind of run into he's really a borderline candidate. His jaws is higher than an average Hall of Fame catcher, but after that, he falls short. But part of that is because only super elite catchers are kind of skewing these numbers, and it's such a small sample size.
Right. It's harder to look at the jaws when you're only looking at 9 data points.
Well, and this is a thing that, again, this drives me nuts, and we've done a little better recently, but and this is the way, I was complaining about the way the GBC voting was ending up, especially in the Deuce. There were 2 GBC leagues, the GBC, which became the GBC Prime, because they had so many owners, they created an entire second league. So there was the Prime and the Deuce, and I was primarily in the Deuce, but ended up in both of them as we lost owners later on. Anyway, it ended up the Hall of first baseman and the corner outfielders. And, if we look at this, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 shortstops. 8 or so. Oh, wow. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 third basemen. Maybe a few more second basemen. 12 at first base. Just tons of left field. We've got 25% more first basemen, left fielders, and right fielders, and center field's doing okay than we do these other positions.
Center field's just light.
Center field's light. So. Oh yeah, it's super light.
It's extremely small group there in center field.
Well, how long did it take us to put Tipper in? And that was ridiculous, right? That he took $1 million. How do you not put that guy in? And it's because he's not a power hitting first baseman, right fielder, or left fielder. So
74 home runs. You can't, if you only want to see those power guys. The guys, then you're not going to vote for him. So,
well, I was going to say,
you absolutely should. You really should. But
62. We had 60. This is our 63rd season, I believe. Is that right? Okay. I still have to add the last couple of guys to the game. So let's say I think there's 3 I'm missing in here. So in 63 years, we have 114 Hall of Famers only, and people complain about it not being elite enough.
Right, that's what gets me. I think we're actually doing okay to the point of maybe being slightly too exclusive. I'm a small hall guy, believe it or not, but the people who think they're small hall guys or propose themselves as small guys, to me, are ridiculous hall guys. What's the point of the Hall of Fame that has 10 people in it over a 50-year period? I don't why do you even why not just remember those 10 players and not make a building? We could in real baseball, if the Hall of Fame was just Babe Ruth and Willie Mays and Jackie Robinson and Sandy Koufax and Christy Mathewson, what's the point of having the Hall if you can just in a 100-year span of the game riddle off the names of the players in it because there's only 20 of them? It just seems silly to not celebrate the rest of these guys. Tipper Kengos, I think I voted for him. He was on the ballot before I got here. And I
had to bring him back as a veteran candidate.
He has a 428 career on base percentage. 428. How is that?
Well, he doesn't hit homers, Ted. He can't be in the Hall of Fame. How is he helping his team without hitting homers?
Right. Yeah. It just blows my mind that he wasn't getting votes.
Is this your first day crunching numbers, folks, or what?
Yeah. Well, I don't know. The pitchers, I think we're doing an okay job with the batters. That we need to put in some more of those skill position guys. We need to do a better third base and catcher. I think are where we're really just not doing a good job. But pitchers, I think we've talked about relievers enough. I just think we're completely inconsistent on the pitchers we put in and the pitchers we don't. Because some of the guys that you've put in, I don't even know where the bar is. Because some of the guys you put on the veteran ballot, I'm like, well, compared to what people have been voting, these guys don't make it. But then we put in Perry Eccles.
And then it's like, what the hell? I was looking at the ballot and like, do I really keep Esteban Benitez on the ballot? And then invariably, some people vote him like 5th and 6th, and he's garbage.
Right.
He shouldn't even be on the ballot.
Right, and that's exactly how I feel about that. Like, Esteban Benitez is not even the Hall of Very Good. He was an above-average pitcher for a number of years. Perry Eccles actually has a legitimate case, but I think he is one of the weakest pitchers in the Hall of Fame.
Let's talk about the weak part of the Hall of Fame. There's guys here. Okay, there's some guys that have really low monitors and jaws. The story behind that is, when we started the league in '73, some guys started age 30, 31. They had short careers. Yeah. And you look at a guy like Willie Mays Hayes and Dickie Brinkman and McNeckerty and Soba. They kind of had short careers. Now there's some guys in here that shouldn't be in here. Okay. Unga Galunga should not be in here. Ryan Dunn, probably a pretty good case for him not being in there. Although there's a fairly good case for him still to be in there, I guess.
I don't see it, but
and then we're into some guys like Lance Peer,
second baseman.
Yeah.
I think that's why I voted for him, and I think that's why. I think I was just like, it's an underrepresented position.
It's the same reason I ended up going for it, too. Let's look at Hall of Fame standards. Right. So bear in mind, the 4 guys at the bottom, those are EBA guys. That's why they're in there. Jean-Marc Fraze, Brad Sharples, Jody Brown, Julio Chasson. They're EBA guys.
Right. Which I think is really cool that we have them. Like, as I don't know, just the word keeping track of that era.
Schmidt Meyer's really low down, but he was a super dominant reliever in the early days. Marquise Futon belongs. Brian Walden is actually really low.
Walden, I think, shouldn't. That's one of the ones I hated. I don't think Walden's a Hall of Famer. I don't know why he. But people didn't vote for Jim Schmidt. But they voted for Brian Walden.
Yes.
Just like Jim Schmidt, if I remember, and I don't remember, can't pick up his stats. Well, I could search for him, but I'm looking at another screen. But he had if you care about wins, he had 200 something wins. He was a strikeout machine. I feel like he had a relatively short. He didn't have one of those super long careers, so it wasn't really long. But then you've got Brian Walden, who what the hell?
Nebraska awards. That's what helped him.
He played for 12 freaking years. And he was bad in 4 of them. I don't know about, bad. He was bad in 4 of those years. So he had 8 good years.
Yeah, and they weren't good enough it wasn't like a Sandy Koufax short career. It was,
Meanwhile, the genius is figuring out where I live.
Right.
It's just he's gonna kill me. And I'm not. This the problem with doing this is you make it sound like you don't like the guy. Brian Walden was a great pitcher, and he was an ace of a staff that's won a championship. Wait, no, he didn't win a championship, did he? I don't think he did. Yeah. But he was. I feel like he did.
There's he's kind of in that grouping on the bottom with the bottom starters. I'm looking at standards. Walden, Stratholland, Steve Hoffman, Ryan Dunn, Perry Eccles, but Hoffman and Stratholland had such amazing peaks.
Right, totally different.
Crapload of strikeouts in a different era. Eccles, I'm not sure. I think we were just desperate for starting pitchers and he was the first one to hit 200 wins in a while.
So I did a thing about when I was whining about I was whining about Perry Eccles. So I decided to prove that his wins didn't matter, that they were, because I thought that's what got him in, that they were a product of being in Las Vegas, Montreal, and Calgary. And actually, what I managed to show was that he probably would still have had 200 wins on average teams because he actually hit low points for Calgary and you. And his ERA, when I did this stuff, probably should be about 3.4. So he's probably a little bit better pitcher than he looks like.
Yeah, I can see that argument, but the guy has zero black ink, zero.
There's a lot of people with zero black ink. To be fair, the thing about
Eccles is
old timers. So there's no black ink showing up.
Yeah, I think that's what it is.
And he should have black ink is the point. Like he's not in the era when there was no black ink, and he has zero.
That's my point.
In his defense, your division was Seattle, big offense park; Calgary, big offense park; Las Vegas, big offense park. Like it just kept. What were the other next? No, that's thinking about GBC stuff. Who else was in your division back then? New Orleans? Was New Orleans
Long Beach probably?
Long Beach.
Yeah, and I mean I don't know what kind of park that was, but 4 of those are either big offense. 3 of them are pretty big offensive parks.
Was enormous bandboxes, and that was kind of my argument for Eccles at the time. I think if you look at his FIP, it's probably closer to what you were saying earlier. He actually probably would have been a lot better if he had pitched, like he pitched for you 1 year at the end of his career in relief, and look how much better he was than he was in Calgary.
Yeah. His career FIP's 3.8, his career FIP minus is 88. He's borderline, though. I feel like he's a borderline guy that got in. And it's not so much to beat up on Eccles. It's to point out the guys that we're not putting in when we put in Eccles and Walden.
Right. Now we go to here. Let me go to retired players and go to all players and black ink, and here we go. So we put in Eccles, right? But we somehow didn't put in Amen Matrani.
Oh, that's got an H in it, right?
Mitrani, and I even put him up for the veterans again, and he got no love. Look at all the times he led the league and stuff. That guy is not in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, this guy, he needs to be.
And for anybody trying to follow along at home, the game is broken and is showing batting stats for pitchers. Pitching stats. Okay. Default, sorry. I had to click and change stuff.
Yeah.
He's an 86 WAR starter.
Led the league 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 11.
His FIP minus for his career is 75. For frame of reference, for people that don't follow FIP minus, Ricardo Diaz won a Nebraska with a 75 FIP minus, and that is this guy's career.
And he just got shut down. Okay, Jesse Wright. Here's another one. Go look at Jesse Wright and tell me that guy's peak wouldn't at least get him more of a conversation. The guy won 30 games in a season.
Well, you guys used to have 35 to 40 start seasons, though.
That's a 5-man rotation. That guy's not a Hall of Famer?
Oh. Okay. I'm having trouble finding him.
Jessie.
I'm searching in the game, not in the HTML.
I'm in the game.
This is an example. Like you look at Eccles and you talk about, he only pitched for 12 years. Well, okay, so Jesse Wright also, but you look at Jesse Wright's peak, and he put together about 6 years where he was over 7 WAR each year. Along with a lot of black ink, especially on strikeouts, which for me is, if you're leading the league in strikeouts, then, that's a big deal.
Well, and striking out well over a batter of an inning, right? 240 innings, 280 strikeouts. That is.
Yeah.
Yeah. K per nine's over 10 for a starter. That's just
you've got to recalibrate when you're looking at BBA K per 9, because it's not like that, MLB, especially modern MLB. If you're looking at a K per inning, that's elite.
You mean not like Josh Hader?
Yeah,
Right.
not like 50% strikeout rates.
The guy is on pace to strike out 18.7 per 9, all-time major league record.
But my team beat yours tonight, Rect.
Well,
that's all I'm saying. You're going to win the division. Well, I don't know if you are, because the Cubs could turn it around. We're just poorly constructed and badly managed. But we won tonight.
3/5 of our opening day starting rotation on the DL, and we're still doing this.
Yeah, I'm just
that was a nice end to last night's game, though. I did enjoy that.
I was fortunately at a ceremony for some graduating people, so I didn't have to suffer through it.
We were just like, what would Jesus do? And then Mike Matheny, every time they pan to him in the dugout lately, since you guys are like doing non-cardinal things this year, he has
every year.
He has this look on his face like, I'm about to get fired.
I hope terrible. He does. Like, it's fun. It's fun watching. It must be fun being on the opposing team, being like, well, they're going to take the starter out. They're not taking the starter out. We're going to score a bunch of runs. It's amazing. Or watching a reliever walk the first two guys he faces, and you look at the pen and nobody's warming up. You're just like, well we're going to win now.
Generally terrible. I mean, it's been having Counsell as a manager is so refreshing because the guy does things the right way. And he's like ahead of the curve. It's so weird to actually have a manager that's impacting the game in a positive fashion. Well,
all right, we're rambling now. So why don't we wrap up the recording part of this? And if we still want to dither about things, we can. Thanks, guys, for doing this. I think this turned out pretty well. I think it'll be an enjoyable listen. I hope everybody had a good time. But thanks, Matt.
You're welcome. Thanks, Ted.
Pleasure.